Hi everyone, this is Dr. Raquel Butler from Integrated Veterinary Therapeutics.
And Sophie Vandenberg from Equine Postulate. And we welcome you to the Equine Functional Posture Podcast, your ultimate source for insights into the influence of functional posture on biomechanics, health, and overall well-being of horses.
Whether you're a seasoned equestrian, an equine professional, or simply a horse enthusiast, this podcast is designed to help you understand the critical aspects of functional posture.
Tune in each week as we discuss practical tips, delve into expert interviews, and explore the latest research in the impact of functional posture on equine anatomy, physiology, movement, and more.
Let's create a world where we empower our horses to be in a mental, emotional, and physical balance. Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode. We're extremely lucky today to have our very first guest on the podcast, Robyn Hood from British Columbia in Canada. Robyn is, very well known in the postural circles, and so it's an absolute pleasure to have her on the podcast as our first guest. So, we'd love to meet you, Robyn, and just tell us a bit about your journey.
Thanks, my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
So my journey actually began, Linda Tellington-Jones is my sister, and we come from a horsey family, and I rode before I could walk, thanks to Linda, did all kinds of things. And, it's interesting because Linda has always been so far ahead of her time. And in 2025 will be 50 years since she started to develop the Tellington method. And we've done a lot of things, and I would say that Linda Linda's 87, and she still hops on horses that she doesn't know and does all kinds of things because she works with them in a way that's super quiet. And it's about, like, really the Tellington method is about relationship building, and part of that relationship we realized very, very early on is that posture is so intrinsic to behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, nothing new for you.
Yeah.
And I remember many years ago, this whole concept of lowering a horse's head, or all the gimmicks that are used to lower a horse's head, is because we know that in general, if a horse's head is lower, particularly comfortably lower, they are less likely to some kind of a reflexive action. So what we also know is if a horse is high-headed, their back is probably tight. The pole will generally be tight. If the pole is tight, the pelvis is tight. So from the very beginning, we kind of looked at the horse of a whole, and our interest was to look at behavior as a form of communication, and to help horses be the most comfortable they could be in their bodies.
Yeah.
So when we have that comfort, then we have a better performance, which is what many people are looking to achieve. And it's so important for the long-term health of the horses. And of course, horses get blamed so much about, they have this bad behavior, and we know there's a reason for behavior. Behavior that we don't like. And I remember in the early 90s, Linda made a statement that it was her belief that unwanted behavior, 90% of unwanted behavior, came from fear, pain, or fear of pain.
Yeah.
And you can't separate any of them.
Yeah, it's such an important thing for people to realize, and especially, like, we've talked a lot about it already in terms of it just being a form of communication, and that we have to, try to figure out what they're trying to communicate to us, whether it's fear or pain or both, or so it's so important. So what kind of things from that, what kind of horses have you seen transform with the use of your work from that behavioral perspective?
Well, actually, one of the horses that probably taught me the most was in I think 1990, 89 or something. Dr. Rana Klimka did his last. He used to do these giant workshops, basically, where he took 12 horses, 2 from first level through Grand Prix, and he had 2,500 spectators, which is pretty daunting. And so we were invited, Linda and I, and we took a bunch of practitioners, were invited to work on the horses between the lessons. And Dr. Klimka is pretty amazing in terms of how he worked with people and their horses. And so Linda did a little demo the night before, and one of the Grand Prix horses was a horse that had lost his piaffe. And so when Linda was working with him, so we use tools that people would look at as go, oh my God, how can this be gentle? But the extension of your hand, if we use these pretty stiff dressage whips, I mean, they're not stingy, and to just go over the horse's body as an extension of your arm. And so this particular horse, he was super sensitive under the belly, and he was known for, well, he had to have a general anesthetic to have his sheath cleaned. Yeah. And his sheath got so dirty so quickly. So he was known to kick at people and so on when they were putting on boots and so on. And of course, if he wanted to kick them, he would have. He's just trying to communicate that things aren't really comfortable. And so I had the opportunity to work with them in the days of when the person was having her lessons. And the first thing that I did was I noticed that he had so much just overall tension in his body. And I noticed that when I put the back of my hand underneath his belly, because I thought, I want to see why he's so sensitive around the sheath area. And I watched his ear and his eye, and anytime he just moved it a little bit, I stopped. And then I moved back to where he was comfortable. And then I moved back again. And it took me about 20 minutes actually to get to the sheath area. And I've never, ever experienced anything like it. There were probably like 4 centimeters of hard schmegma around the inside of the sheath. It was absolutely disgusting. And I thought, no wonder you can't do piaffe. How can you lift your hind legs in a mindful way when you're like that? So anyway, I was able to, I didn't have anything on his head. I let him be totally free in the stall. And people came by and they asked me if he was tranquilized because his head was so low and he was totally relaxed. And I said no. So anyway, I was able to do a little bit of, get some, sheath cleaner inside to soften it. And then he wanted contact. He just didn't want the way they were kind of attacking him. And I think that's a huge part. I consider how we handle horses is the first handling that we have is going to influence posture, and it's going to influence our sort of our journey, if you will, into it. So anyway, bottom line is with this horse, by the 3rd day, he actually had piaffe again. And I really believe, first of all, I believe that systemically there's something really going on in that horse that he would create that kind of schmegma. And I think he had so much crud and discomfort from it that he couldn't really lift his hind leg. So anyway, he did. So he was a horse that really taught me so clearly to listen to their whispers so they don't have to shout. And that's, we tend to do things to animals because we can. And then we kind of create this, we don't listen to them when they're subtle. We wait till they really shout. And then we say they gave us no warning and, all of those kinds of things. So it's our aim to actually help people be more observant about their horses, pay attention to small things, pay attention to how do they stand? Like, what is their habitual posture like? We all have our postures and we carry our postures with us. They're part of our habits and so on. And habits aren't bad in itself. It's just that if you want to change a habit, you have to change something.
Yeah. 100%.
Because habits bypass the thinking part of our brain. And the idea is, and this goes for posture, for everything, for us as well, is in order to change something, we have to add minor amounts of novelty so that it gets the attention of the nervous system in a way that is not too stressful. A little bit of stress is okay, but then you take them back to where they're comfortable, and any that we want to move them into a different space. And so we do that by, as I said, from the very first thing that I believe creates handling issues is how we groom horses. Yeah. If we have a horse that's body sensitive and we put them in cross ties, which are usually don't allow a horse to lower their head to a position that actually has any sense of relaxation over the top line, then we're creating that from the very beginning of our handling process. So we create more tension, and then we try to ride them or train them out of that tension, and it's not usually going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's a journey with that. So we start with grooming, how we groom them, what's comfortable for the horse, and the same goes for the body work that we do. We are looking for, with the TTouch, is we're looking to find, first off, what the horse says, yeah, this is okay. Because if we can't develop a relationship with the horse that he knows will listen to him, and we can still get what we want. The horses don't walk all over me. It's just I pay attention to, what I'm doing and how I'm handling them.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty much common sense, but I feel that sometimes common sense has gone out the window. Like people, they don't trust their own knowing. And because somebody else says, oh no, your horse is just doing this or this, and so they don't trust it. And the one thing I have learned, I've been working with Linda for 40 years, and I was aware of how she was starting, and then I started working in the development, is that there is always a reason for behavior, always. And it doesn't mean that you can always fix it to a point that the horse can do what you want it to do, but they sure don't wake up in the morning and go, yeah, I think I'll really be troublesome today, so I'll get in trouble. I mean, we know that they don't. So and then it carries on from grooming to how we lead our horses. If lead lines underneath the chin are one of the worst things we can do, because if we pull the head down, the head goes up and the back drops, or the horse does something we want and someone shakes a rope at it and the head goes up and the back drops. So I always say to people, you want to create posture in all your handling that you would want in everyday life. And for me, it's baseline for functional posture, because it's not enough that you do whatever you handle them, in everyday life, and then suddenly in training you expect to have something else. So that's and a really simple thing for people is, if you use a flat halter as opposed to a rope halter, just to attach your lead line to the side ring, providing it, especially if it's can't be super, super heavy. And you will see a difference in your horse. They tend to lower their head. They tend to be able to walk in better balance. Because when people say, oh, my horse is really rushy, well, how we see that is they're just completely out of balance. So they're falling forward constantly. And what we want is, we want them to be able to shift the weight back, release the head and neck, and be able to lift through the withers. Really basic. And if you can start to create that in your everyday handling, it makes everything about life so much easier.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, gosh, we've talked about a lot of this, throughout the podcast as well, because we just see it as being so integral, in terms of like all the stuff that you've just said there. Can you just tell us, so like the TTouch is the bodywork aspect of the modality, and then you've got the Tellington method. Can you just explain those to people, what they are?
Yeah, and it's one of those things that is sort of a misnomer, because people know it as the bodywork form. And the reason, and in Europe, they primarily call it the Tellington method, because bodywork is a part of it. Yeah. And so it's a really gentle, non-invasive way. And our intention is to affect to affect them at a cellular level. And so it's really about, Linda, a long time ago, started really researching this concept of cellular memory and so on, and how we could release fear in the cells. So the body work is the part that people know the best. We have these different areas of it. So we have what we call, like approach and handling. We have body wraps that we use. We have leading exercises that we do that are intended to show horses what we want, rather than stopping them from doing what we don't want. Yeah. And it's really, so every time we're leading them, we want to, so we use the wand to give them, information. It's not ever intended to hit them or whack them or, create, escalate any sort of pressure. It's about how can we chunk it down so that the horse can actually get what we want. And it's a little bit like Tai Chi for horses, because what we know about movement is, for humans, is that slow movement, slow mindful movement develops deeper muscles, muscles at a deeper level than fast movement. So when we're doing a lot of things, if people are doing things that are fast, there's a lot of imbalances that happen, and so horses are kind of catching themselves, and so are people, because our balance is actually as important as the horses.
Absolutely. And I can attest to that. I've been to a Tellington clinic, you know, for the groundwork, and it really had such a huge emphasis on slow and controlled movement, giving the horse enough time to process the environment that they're in and the obstacles you're asking them to interact with and move around. And when you are intentionally paying attention to how they explore those obstacles, it was just so much fun and so valuable to see, you know, how in depth their attention was and their exploration of all the different things when they were able to move slowly and stay in balance, because you're always staying within their threshold. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. And it's hard for people because we're busy, you know, we're busy people. We want to make things happen quickly. And your point about giving them time to respond is absolutely critical. You know, we come up with an idea of what we want to do, so the idea has to go from my brain to my body, to the horse's body, to their brain, back to their body. And it doesn't matter if you're riding or if you're on the ground. Giving them those moments of pause make things happen actually quicker, and in a way that they can respond. I mean, then they get quicker in their responses because they are able to organize their bodies in a way that they can do it. And I was thinking about the groundwork. The very first time I came to Australia, which was in, I think, 1987, I was asked to go to Perth to the vet school there, and I did a little 2-day demo. And the organizer, who actually was a vet, she brought a horse to the course, a retired racehorse, and who was really difficult to shoe. And her partner was a farrier, and they had to tranquilize him all the time to shoe. So bring the horse to the course. What do? We do some leg circles. And our leg circles are not about stretching. They're about helping the horse really find their balance, finding comfortable range of movement, so we can show freedom rather than limitation. And that's what we find is really important for humans as well. I can stretch my own arm, but if you go to stretch my arm, I'm going to retract before that moment. So anyway, we just do what we do, little bits of, you know, where are they tight here? Can we make it easier for them? Going over some poles slowly, little star fashion or uneven poles. It doesn't really matter. We want to find out what the horse can do first. So it's not about challenging them to make it harder and harder. We want them to be successful, because none of us would keep doing what we do if we were never felt like we were successful. So anyway, this horse, we did not shoe him at the course. And I saw Jenny like a week later. She came on a long course that we did in Queensland. And she said, you know, I was really disappointed. She hadn't said to me, we need to like reshoe the horse. But anyways, I don't know what she thought. She said, I was so disappointed that we didn't, you know, address his shoeing issue. So, and she said, but I went home, and my partner, we didn't have any tranquilizer. So we thought, well, we'll just see how he was. He was perfectly easy to shoe.
Yeah.
The other thing that she noted, and this is where like threads of connection come in that we don't necessarily recognize. And so she said, you know, the other thing I noticed is that he's normally, when he's on the float, he sweats the whole time. He's absolutely dripping wet when he gets anywhere. And when we took him home, he stood quietly and he wasn't wet.
That's
so
wonderful.
For us, all of those things are about balance, feeling safe and comfortable in the environment of the float, so that he can be in better balance, in better functional posture, so it's easier for him. So we see that a lot. Like, work on a problem. If someone approaches us with some, we have a lot of tools we would use, but not necessarily head on. And then what we find is that when we change their balance, when we change their posture, their ability to balance, then those things go away.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I'll often, you know, say someone has to travel their horse here for bodywork, and now I had one lady once, like they had to travel, I don't know, the horse had been in the truck for 6 or 8 hours, and then they were stopping at my place, and then they had to travel another 6 or 8 hours the next day. And when it got there, you could see it had been leaning on the bar, and you know, I think it had sweated, and like it was just obviously standing in an awkward posture when she put the back down. And we did body work on it, did some movement work. And then she said when she got to Melbourne the next day, like it hadn't leant on the bar. It was comfortable, standing in a nice position. And yeah, like it was just helping the horse get into a comfort and a balance, so that it could balance. And that was the second leg of the journey. So like it was already tired. It had a night sleepover in a strange place at my place in a big paddock. But yeah, it's integral for so many functions in their life. Like it's not just ridden work, is it? Like it's balancing on the float, balancing for the farrier, balancing for you to lead them. Like it's
and
so
and 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 they're all connected. That's what people don't recognize. They think when they get on the horse is when they're starting to do something. And so when people can recognize, oh, you know, my horse was at your place, we did some body work. Oh, he was different when he continued on the journey. And it is about helping humans be more observant about small things that can help their horses. I think it is another huge part of what we do is, and it's not being creepily observant. It's like, oh, do you notice, you know, my horse in the past did such and such, and now suddenly it's like different for them. And I think that in my experience, horses will seek comfort. And if we can show them a way that's more comfortable, and then it's up to us to be able to find that way that we can also maintain it from our part, because our habits are so strong that when we get into some kind of distress, we'll go back to whatever we learned first, and so will horses. And so, you know, what I say to people is, because they'll say, oh, now he did this again. And what I would say is, so what was the recovery rate? Because that's the first thing you have to do is how quickly can they recover, because they are not going to be necessarily perfect. So then we have to consider all the things that, you know, I'm sure you consider too, is, you know, not like saddle foot, dentists, the feet, all of those things, the rider's position, the rider's attitude, because I don't think that we can eliminate our thoughts from how we work with horses and how we feel about it, and you know, what we look at. And I often say to people, and this is like any method that you're working with, doesn't matter what it is ask 5 questions. And the first question is, if it's like a training kind of thing, is what they're saying and what they're doing the same thing? And this could actually could be applied probably even to any sort of body work and so on, because people may not know what they're doing is making a difference. So the second one is, if you were in the animals, this applies to dogs as well, body, what would you be learning? Because I've watched, and I'm sure you've all watched people work, and I had no idea what they were asking. No idea. And then I thought, wow, how is the horse supposed to know that?
Yes.
The third one is, and this is really important, is how do you feel about what's being done? How do you feel in your heart, and how do you feel in your gut? Because no matter what anyone tells you, how good this is or bad or whatever, if you don't feel okay, then the fourth thing is, could you do it? Won't happen, because your horse knows if there's something that you're being asked to do that they say, this isn't actually okay for me. And so it is about helping people find ways of working with horses that they feel comfortable with as well. And the fifth one, which is absolutely the most important, is what do they do and what they're doing doesn't work? Because it's really easy to be nice when things are going well. When things aren't going well, can they stop? Can they change direction? Can they take a pause? You know, or do they simply escalate what they're doing? So it's for me, it's a sieve that people can put things through to help them find things that resonate with them, and that will be that they'll be able to do.
Yeah, I love those questions. They're like hugely valuable for everyone to ask. Can I just go back to question 4, because I was just just kind of making some notes there as well, because I was like, oh, this is good.
Yeah.
When you said, how do you feel? So how you feel within yourself? I assume the question 3 was, how do you feel within yourself about what's
Yeah.
being to the
Yeah.
horse?
Yeah.
So in your heart and your gut, and then you said, could you do it?
So for instance, if someone's saying, well, you need to do this, this, and this with your horse, like it's generally like in some kind of training method.
Yeah.
If you don't feel okay, could you do it? Like, is your timing good enough? Are you experienced enough? Is if it really feels not okay for you and someone's bullying you into doing it or saying, you need to do this because that's how the horses, you whatever. And you're going, yeah, okay. And your brain is saying, and your horse is going, this isn't okay for me. The horse knows it. So someone else might be able to do it with your horse.
Yeah.
But you may not. So I'm always looking for things. I need to find ways of helping people work with their horses that they're also comfortable with.
Yeah. I find that in teaching as well. Like, I could take the horse and do the thing, but then I give the horse back to the owner, and I see in the owner, like it's not computing for them. Like they can't get coordinated, or they can't find the balance, or they actually aren't sure what I'm looking for. And so I've had to change my exercises for the owner to be able to do it, because otherwise it just creates tension, confusion, brace, and they go backwards.
Oh, absolutely. And then they won't do it if they're not comfortable with it. And that's where I was saying the human posture. We do a lot of exercises where people get to be the horse, and it's just to see like how unbalanced they are, even when you go to lead them. And so when you go to lead your horse forward, do you close your hand on the lead and move your feet forward? Do you make a little contact? And I tend to ask people to just slowly move forward, because my criteria for a horse walking forward is that their head lowers and they step forward. If the head pops up when someone asks them to come forward, they've pulled. And so I find if I don't want jamming in the pole, I want them to have more freedom. And so that takes the ability, they need to be able to, that's why we use the wand. If you draw a line where you want the horse to go, and you can then, there's a pause that happens that allows the horse to kind of follow it with their head down. Then when we ask them to stop, if we bring the wand toward the chest, I don't want the head to go up when they stop. I actually want them to shift the weight back through the torso and release the head and neck. That would be my goal, so that we can start to see, is that possible for the horse? What do we have to do? Where are they bracing? And that's where we might add a body wrap. And I've had some amazing experiences with horses being like completely upside down, braced at the base of the neck, and putting wraps on them and have them completely change their outline. And it's not because it's because what our intention is to give feedback to the body about what it is doing.
Yeah, so can you just explain, because for some listeners, they might not be familiar with the body wraps, so could you just explain them a little bit?
Yeah. So in the very beginning, actually more than 50 years ago, like many people with young horses and so on, we would use a butt rope to teach them to come forward. And then we started to, with horses, we started to use like a figure 8 body rope done in a way that they could move with it. And what it did is it helped connect the horse from front to back through the torso and help them release the head and neck. And then through some interesting ways, we had somebody with a dog, and we started working with dogs, and they had a dog, and they used a horse leg wrap on the dog. And it was a dog that lacked a lot of confidence and so on. And the dog had more confidence, and the wrap stayed on. So we thought, wow, this is interesting. So let's see what happens if we start to use wraps on the horses instead of ropes. And the ropes were never used anything other than just to connect the horse front to back, not tight and so on. So when we started using wraps, it meant that we could say, put a base wrap on. So the wraps we primarily use now would be some sort of stretchy. We tend to use Ace, or there's several different brands that we use. The intention of it is to go, maybe we would start with a wrap around the neck, just the base of the neck. And that in itself I've actually seen horses respond to this what we call a base wrap, the same way they do on a surefoot pad. I've had horses lower the head and start to sway when they were super, super on the forehand, just those cobby types, brace through the front legs. So that would be the first step. It helps to kind of trigger that seeking reflex in a really passive way. From there, we might add a wrap that goes around the back end. It's just tight enough to stay on. So it's not about, there's now a system of tension that goes around the whole body. It's quite wide elastic. They sent us some to try about 10 years ago, but we found that they impeded the movement more than really helped it. So it's a different intention. Our intention is to help the dogs or the horses' proprioceptive systems to come into balance. And if we allow the body to get feedback about where they are in space, it helps to improve proprioception. And we know that light contact on either side of the joint is one of the things that helps to activate proprioception. So we have a lot of different ways that we might put it on the horse. And we have to sometimes really chunk it down for horses that are nervous about things behind and so on. We can put a head wrap on where you just go around the neck like a loose turtleneck, not like a tight one, and then even bring it forward over the ears so that there's a light contact on the forehead and on the back of the ears. And again, some of the stuff we did, we started, it kind of came as an accident, and then we found out that it worked. And when we found that this light, what we call a forehead wrap, really worked well, one of our teachers who's a holistic vet, she said to me, well, maybe the reason that this light contact on the forehead makes a difference is that the governing vessel kind of starts here and then it goes along the body and it's responsible for helping relaxation. So maybe that's part of it. Maybe it is. So we certainly see that if you have a horse that's super spooky about things, that is just what I say, not in their bodies, they're like outside of their bodies, that the head wrap can be really helpful. Now, really quiet horses can get like really quiet, so you just take it off. So that can be hugely beneficial. The same with humans. We use simple wraps across the shoulders, and why it's useful for people to feel it is humans have more fragile balance than a horse in terms of that, because we only have two legs, so it's easier to put them out of balance. And when they wear it, what they generally do is just a simple wrap, they'll feel like they're taller. And it's not about pulling the shoulders back, it's about letting them know where they are in space and helping the nervous system know what it is doing so that it has more choice.
Yeah, like integrating that communication there.
Exactly.
Yeah, I have to share, I did the, I think I did an online course like years and years and years ago, like a Tellington one with the body wraps and things. And I remember my very first experience with the wraps, and it was in England. I just happened to be there, and I just said this horse was walking quite abnormally with its front legs, and almost to the point of ataxic, like I couldn't stay on a straight line, and I didn't have an actual wrap, so I just said, do you have a soft bandage? And so they got a soft bandage and we wrapped it around the leg, just really, really softly, and that horse walked like perfectly in a straight line with perfect limb awareness, completely changed its demeanor, its movement. We were all just like, wow, that was crazy. So yeah, like it's really amazing to watch that transformation in horses, like when they're just responding to such a soft, like just something so soft, just bringing awareness to that part of their body, or grounding that area or something like that.
Yeah, it's hard to know exactly. I have a theory that is not provable, I'm sure, but I actually think, from working with all the people I've worked with too, is that I think there's something about sometimes that it kind of resets proprioception. So if the body is really skewed from sort of one thing or another, that it can really make a difference. And I've seen some changes happen that, and you can't say if you do A, B will happen. You just have to do it and see what happens. And that's the other thing that's hard for humans, because we want to know if I do A, that B will happen, but our nervous systems are all different. And we have to just give that information really quietly to the nervous system so that it can just respond however it's going to respond. And we had in our dog training class, one of our students had to do like some little experiment with TTouch. And so this was in dogs, and they took 3 yoga mats and they spread flour just thinly over them. And they took about 13 dogs. And so the first one, they walked over the mat with nothing on. And the second one with a head wrap. And the third one with a half wrap or a quarter wrap for a dog. And there were 5 dogs that were neurological. And the interesting thing is that the head wrap made most difference to the footfall pattern, so that it went from, really consistent footfall pattern, not like ataxic or whatever, with those horses, or dogs rather. So it was just interesting that she had taken that time to do it. But I was just trying to think of where this was in the early 2000s. One of our teachers was working with 2 vets that had EPM horses, and at that time, they could treat them, but they couldn't bring them back into function. And so she put together a little booklet, a neurological booklet that involves some touches and some wraps and some of the movement and exercises, and in kind of a letting people pick what they wanted and keeping track of it over a period of time. And they were able to, these 2 vets had EPM horses, and they were able to bring their horses back into function. And so we've had many people that have used the techniques, and they're pretty simple for people to follow. And that's important. You have to have something that's simple enough that they can carry on with it after the treatment's been done. And so I actually have people sometimes use it just so that they have a little bit of a guideline of what to do.
That's interesting. I was going to ask you, you've talked about the T wraps, but because I've attended a couple of Tellington clinics, I know you guys have a number of tools, and I wanted to ask you about your wand, because it could easily be mistaken for an average dressage whip, but when you feel it, it's much softer. It has a beautiful feel. It's very soft at the end with the tip that touches the horse, or all of it. It feels really nice. And one of the techniques that I was taught is a really soft stroking motion, and it was quite profound at the clinic. And I work with a lot of foals, and it's something that I use on every foal, where using it to very gently stroke down the neck and down the leg. And I think that had a really big effect on me, thinking I think the instructor, you're doing it lovingly. She explained that you're doing it lovingly. You're doing it with the touch that you would like to receive. And the fact that you call it a wand changes the way that people understand how they're trying to use something. It's not to teach. It's a way to create feel. And I was thinking about that in relation to your third question. How do you feel about what's being done in your heart and your gut? And just the fact that when people want to use something a certain way, the intention behind it is different. And also the way you feel about the interaction can shape the interaction as well. If you wanted to say something about the wand or explain better than I
can. Yeah. So it's interesting. I think in 1986 or 87, we did a series of videos for some company. This is, a long time ago. And we were using the wand, and I was trying to think of why Linda started using a white wand. I have to ask her about that, because we've been going kind of back to, one of it is that most people, if they've used a whip, it's been black or brown, and it's been used sort of as a tool to, punish a horse or get after a horse. And you're right, these wands are hollow in the handle, so that's why the balance is so nice. And they're not we don't use them as a whip, but they're not stingy like some whips are. But it's an extension of the arm, and it has to be like the TTouch would fall into the category of light pressure touch as opposed to alarming touch. So there has to be a little flex in it so it doesn't tickle, because otherwise it's that fly response that they get. We use it on every foal. I used to breed a lot of Icelandics, and one year we had 28 foals. And so we don't overhandle our foals. We don't handle them. We handle them a little bit with their mothers, but it's, I believe that how foals are handled in the beginning is extremely important. And I think that how they're haltered in the beginning is really important. And it's not difficult to just take a little time and be able to help them feel safe about and put their head in the halter to start with, rather than trying to put their nose in the halter. So we would do exactly what you're talking about. What I usually would do is have the mare in the stall with the foal. I start stroking the mare, and sometimes if a horse is really nervous, I start in the air and I stroke where I'm going to go, and then I pause. And those pauses are critical, because what we know is the nervous system takes on information in the pause, not in the doing. And so that moment of just stepping back and going, what about that? And it's also important because they know that you'll stop without you having to, they don't have to do something to make you stop. And that's also really critical. So you do it in little bits of steps. So, and then we can start to make contact. You can actually, I've had horses that I wrap the end of the wand with the body wrap. And that's the first contact I could make, no touch defensive. And it gave me a space, it gave them a space to feel safer. So when we were doing these videos, we had this horse that we were working with, and he couldn't walk over poles. Like, he was a jumper and he was just so nervous about poles. And so we were doing things, and Linda was stroking the legs with the wand and stroking all 4 legs and so on. And then suddenly the next time we took the horse to the poles, he lowered his head and he walked over the poles. And so Linda said, wow, that's like magic. So the thing about the magic is, so a magic wand, the magic stands for more awareness gains interspecies communication or connection, one of those. So it's like an acronym rather than, you know, you see what I mean? Like, that's the,
yes.
the saying. And it does sometimes, as you say, like sometimes it's amazing. Now, something that it's not why we do it, but I don't like see auras or see things like that. It's just not what I do. But I've had people that do say that, first of all, white strokes the aura of an animal in a different way than black or brown. And so I thought, oh, that's interesting. And then someone said to me, in showing cattle, at least in North America, they use a white cane. And they stroke them all over with, they don't hit them with it, but they stroke them all over to help stand them up. So I thought that was kind of, it's just interesting for me when I see these little connections of, things that people do and what they might mean.
That's incredible. That's really beautiful.
Yeah, so like, I take wraps with me to my treatments, but I have my wand in the car sometimes, but I probably don't use it enough, like post bodywork, to help them with their movement. I think it's a little bit difficult sometimes because you do have horses that have had a negative association with whips and things, and it's not always, sometimes they need a little bit more time to create a different association with something like a whip touching them.
Yeah, and that's when I would wrap it with the body wrap, like the end of it, like the button end, and then just do a little bit of contact with them to start with, and then and then kind of stop from there, because or a little bit in the air, or just your hand. Like, it can be interesting just using even your hand, especially the back of the hand changes the energetics than the palm of the hand. And I mean, there's so many simple things that people can do in making contact. But you were probably shown too by Sinead or Rebecca that we've started using the wraps to actually affect the fascia. And Ricky Schultz, she wrote a book about fascia with a German person. Is a good friend of mine and spent some time in my farm when she was in vet school. And so I showed her this video that Rebecca had done with this very difficult, anxious young racehorse. And I was taking the wraps and just stretching them across the tissue, either literally straight across the tissue, or we do belly lifts. We've done belly lifts for years for a variety of things, but even sometimes taking them across the top of the back and just gently stretching it down and then slowly releasing. So we found that a horse with a really roachy back, when we took it the other way, so there was just a little stretch down and the slow release, the back changed. And so, but the thing about this fascial integration, as we're kind of calling it, is that for people who are very heavy-handed and have a hard time going light, and there's a lot of people, they prefer deep tissue massage for themselves. It's a way that they can make a different contact with their horses and have actually really, really good success. We're having some really interesting things with, kissing spine and a lot of different things that are useful with it.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, isn't it? The way that the body responds to less as opposed to more, and it's such human nature to generally do more. And it's always good to be reminded to do less.
Well, it's hard. We're actually, especially horse people, we're actually not all that nice to ourselves either, right? We have to carry heavy bales and buckets and so on. And one of the exercises I have people do is I have them kind of rotate their thumbs and notice if one is tighter than the other. And then I ask them to, just using like as light a touch that they can make that will still move the tissue without rubbing, just do these little tiny circle and a quarters all along their thumb and pretend it's someone else's thumb. Yeah. Because if it's our own thumb, we need it and we really, get into it. And just do it for like 15 to 20 seconds and then feel the difference in their thumbs. And what they're so surprised of how much they feel. Because when you're doing it, you can either be the doer or the receiver if you're working on yourself. Yeah. And if you pay attention to the lightness of it, your nervous system actually gets a different information than when we go in deeper and sort of, we all do it, like I'm going to really massage this area. It doesn't necessarily make it feel better. Yeah. So 100%. It's fun to do that.
Yeah. No, that's a great exercise. What else did we want to?
I really wanted to ask you about, I've read a few things about Tellington Touch and especially in your training books with Linda, and there's a really big emphasis on giving power back to the owner, not expecting or being told that you don't have as much influence in your horse's journey as other people that contribute to the team, your vet or your trainer, especially, and the fact that when horses, it's mentioned in Linda's book, the horse goes away and it learns, but it comes back, and you have to also have the language that the horse just learned to work with the horse, because you just taught them a language. And so I was just wondering, how do you see the role of the owner in the horse's postural journey?
It's everything, because it doesn't matter what, somebody else does. And that is one of the challenges, isn't it? As a, as a holistic vet, a complementary vet doing a lot of things, you can do what you do, but if the person goes away and they're unraveling everything you've done, there'll still be some change, remarkably, and it's going to take longer. And this is when Ricky Schultz was with me for some time, what she told me when she went back to Denmark and working as a vet is she would teach people a few touches. She would teach people a few really basic things. And what it did is, it built the relationship with their horse. And I tell you, the relationship is actually the most important part. And so what it also did is they started to recognize, if I do these little leg circles and suddenly my horse is having trouble balancing on one foot, maybe there's something going on higher. So they can start to help, but then they also can call the vet way earlier so that you can work on things, and it's not like a big problem. And she found that was so helpful for people to really be able to take some responsibility for the well-being of their horse, because some people don't want to do it, but the people that do, you can really give them those tools of things to do. And it's so interesting. One of our instructors is a vet in Italy, and she was a vet and physio and TTouch person for the Swedish jumping team when they won the gold medal and they won the world championships. And she did TTouch on the horses every day, because she said, even as a, she knows she's an animal physio and so on, but she said there were so many things she couldn't do if the animals were stressed, but she could always use TTouch. She could always use it to support their the restfulness that they had, and she really contributed that to a huge part of the team's success. She traveled with them for 2 years in terms of working with them. So I would say that the average person is who we would probably appeal to. And Linda works with Olympic level riders who do really care to do their own thing, to really be able to help their horses. Ingrid Klimka is one, and she'll use like the ear strokes to help her horse when it's eat better when they have to go to a big competition. And Frédéric Pinois, when he was in the Cavalier show in North America, he had all the touch cards made enlarged, and he had every day the horses got something, because he found that it just helped. And when we feel better, we act better. This is true for all of us. It's true for our horses too. And so if we can help in some small way to and know that we can help. And that's always been the way that the whole approach of TTouch is, we don't care if we can do it. We actually only care if we can teach other people to do it, so that they can have a relationship with their own horses that is the relationship that they want to have.
Yeah, it's so integral. I would like to ask one more question. In terms of starting horses, like obviously that's a fairly challenging topic, because a lot of different ways and different methods that have been used historically. What piece of advice would you give people, or numerous pieces of advice about, developing young horses to be ready to be ridden?
Well, one of the last book that Linda did with my daughter, Starting and Restarting, goes through all the steps that we would go through. And, in the 60s, Linda developed a weekend course for amateur adults, and she would show them how to quietly, and this was long before TTouch, so no body work, but quietly teach their horses to walk and stop and lunge quietly and ground drive from a halter, never from a bit, and be able to stand up on things, go under, over, between things, so that they could start their own horses. Yeah. And not everybody can do that, but if you can prepare your horses, the challenge is finding someone, and I think it's a pretty big challenge everywhere. For 25 years, we went to the Bitterroot Ranch, and we did a starting a horse clinic every year. And they're a guest ranch. They own Equitours, so they're kind of all over the world. But when Mel, the wife, she started breeding Arabs, and when she had the first horse to start, this is in Wyoming, and so she sent it to the local cowboy who, she thought was gentle enough, and she went to watch, which is really a good idea. And if someone tells you that you can't come and watch, that would be a really, 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 really big red light for me. But so what happened is the horse had the saddle on. He'd gone through all the things that he always did, and then the horse went over backwards and broke its neck in front of her. And so her husband went online and there's no online then, went through some research and tried to found Linda. And so we started taking people there every year for 25 years and starting the horses quietly. That's the whole thing for me. I think that watching horses be started should be like watching paint dry. Should be just step by step. It should be a little bit boring, because if it's difficult, make it easier, chunk it down. And I know it's hard, because there are a lot of really, really good, I hate the word breakers, but there are lots of really good people out there that can start horses. They can start them for themselves, and they can do it. The key is it has to be for someone else. So I will suggest to people they can go through these steps and at least get their horses prepared, but then be sure that they're sending them to someone that isn't going to then be upset, because I'll tell you what can happen when a horse is, and I've had this experience a couple of times with, I'd sold horses and they were young, and then they had them started, and Icelandics don't generally buck, but this one person said, oh, the horse was really quiet, and then suddenly, you know, out of nowhere, he bucked my trainer off and broke her arm. So I sent this horse down. My daughter was in California. The horse went down there, and I said, we need to restart the horse. The horse was no problem. What I think happened is the horse went into a little bit of freeze when he was being asked to go forward. And so the person asked hard. And then the response was to buck, giving them, that's where that pause, give them time to process what you want. So it's a long-winded answer to that, but I think it's super important. In terms of the age we start them, we never started our horses until they were at least 4. I had a horse that we started at 4. He was really difficult. It was the 28 foal year. And so we left him. And when he was 14, my daughter said, don't you think it's about time? We had 200 horses. She said, I think it's about time we started him. So I said, sure. And he was easy as.
Yeah,
and so when people say, well, you can't let them get too old, yeah, they'll be too difficult. No, if you think they're going to be too difficult because they get too old, find another method. That would be my recommendation anyway.
Yeah, I've had clients like that where they're like, oh, that horse is 8 now. Yeah, maybe we should start. And they've said the same thing. Like, they've said they were easier. Like, they just kind of, I guess, they're emotionally, mentally,
physically, they're, you know, I think that,
and the physical aspect as well, but yeah, like just the whole life experience too.
No, absolutely. And even we had Linda used to we used to work with Hungarian horses from a woman that bred them in Montana, and she had a lot of brood mares, and she would send the brood mares to us at 7 or 8, and they'd never been started. They just had babies, actually hadn't done anything. They were so easy to start because they were mentally, emotionally, physically ready. We could have them eventing in a few months, like just over, you know, low fences, but they were really physically ready, and they were like, yeah, let's do something. It's really fun. So it was remarkable, actually, to see, you know, to see how much easier it was.
Yeah, that's so awesome. That's amazing takeaways for anyone starting horses. I think that, yeah, anyone who's got a young horse needs to listen to that. So.
Please, for your horse's sake and your own sake as well.
Yeah, it is challenging. Well, I think that's been an awesome talk. Like, we've talked already about so many things. But also, like, where can people find you? Where can people find more information about, you know, the books, the courses, the wraps? Like, I have personally books in relation to the wraps for people can purchase. But yeah, what about everything else?
So there is there's an Australian website. We don't really have a store on it. I think it's TTouchAustralia.com.au. Pretty sure that's it. We have an online platform called learntouch.ca, as in Canada. And so we have some free courses. We have some self-paced courses. As you say, there's a course on wraps. And at TTouch.ca, our website, we also have some like the wrap books. You can buy them online, like a PDF, because it's the shipping is the challenging part. I brought a bunch of stuff over with me, and you know, most of it's gone, but books are so heavy to bring over. They're so heavy to ship that makes them like super expensive, but they can get that. And of course, you know Sinead and Rebecca Booth and Michelle Dean are doing lots of things with horses. So it's great in Australia. We have some really, really good people that are spreading the work. So I'm really happy about that. But and Rebecca does have some equipment. But her website, rebecca@elementals.com.au is what I think it is. One of the things about the wands, that Dobert was the company we bought for 50 years, and they're now out of business. So we bought all we could. So it's
That's sad.
yeah, so get one if you can, because they won't be around for long.
Yeah, I might get some more.
Yeah.
Rebecca's website's elementals.com.au.
Yeah.
And yeah, we have a lot of people who've like do the functional posture course that we run, like, and then do Sinead's session, like, because a lot of people are from her area, so they go and do Sinead's courses, and it all just
works
marries
together
up so well. Yeah, like it's just such a complementary modality, and just, I mean, every single horse will benefit regardless of their age level, competition, discipline. Like, it's so relevant to every single type of horse, and little horses, big horses, like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so great. It's so important, the education that you're doing with people, to just, again, bring more awareness to it. And then they have more choice. The humans have more choice. And I think that's really important. And also a lot more understanding about their horses. And for me, that's the primary thing. I love horses, and I think horses give us so much. And I think that they're incredibly, we have such a high level of expectation of behavior from horses and dogs than we do for people. We expect that if they've done something before, they should be able to do it again, no matter what's going on for us, and those things. So I think it's fabulous, the things that you're doing and the education that you're bringing to people.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that, because that's the whole point, right?
Totally. Totally.
To gain more awareness, and I'm, just like everyone, I'm always learning things, and we can always be better and help our horses in a better way. So yeah, Sophie, did you have any last questions?
You can always make, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say that as a point of reference, I've always also found that feedback that I hear about the TTouch clinics, or the Tellington clinics, and the ones that I've experienced myself, it's such a space that doesn't have any judgment. It can sometimes be daunting to either be leaving a space and trying something new, or when you care so deeply and you're entering spaces that are horse focused, there can feel like there's a lot of pressure, and you really care about getting it right. And it's always been a safe space where it's not about you getting it right or making a mistake. It's the observation and making improvements. Yeah, that's how it's always felt.
And I think people, do feel really safe, because you're right. I mean, it's not our intention to judge, and none of us can say what, any of us can look at any of us and say, well, if you just did such and such, what would be different? And until we walk in their shoes or their position, we can't really know that. And I appreciate people coming. I appreciate people taking the risk of opening up to wanting to learn something new. And I do believe you can always make something better. And that's why I ask people to question, put through sieves, what works for you. Just because I tell you something, question it. It's okay. I like questions, it's because it also makes me think about what I do. Is there a better way? And there may be.
Yeah, awesome. Do you have any final takeaway points for people, Robyn?
Just, learn to listen to your horses, and actually pay attention to your own posture and your own feelings when you go to your horse. Because if you're feeling stressed, take a moment to take a breath, and then hold it for a moment, and then do the slow exhale before you make contact with your horse. Because if you're going in and you're in this level of kind of stress and concern, which lots of us may be, your horse will feel it, and they will, respond that way. So, when you put your hands on your horse, it's like, Linda talks a lot about put your hand on your heart and your hand on your horse, and your heart on your horse, so that you just can make that connection. And honestly, when you watch her at 86, when she was, or 85 at the last, Equitana, she's works with these warm bloods that are considered really difficult. She does a little bit with them. She gets on, takes the bridle off, rides them around. The horses are like, oh, this is cool. It's not a trick, it's just that there really is that heart connection. And I think that if that's for you, then go for it.
Yeah. absolutely loved having a chat to you today. And I'm sure Sophie's nodding. Like it's awesome to just speak to like-minded people who are, really trying to be on the same page for the horse. So thank you so much for your time. And everything that you've discussed today.
Thanks, my pleasure. And I hope we can meet someday in person.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Love that.
All right.
Thank you for joining Dr. Raquel
Thanks.
Butler and Sophie Vandenberg and Robyn Hood today in the podcast. Please subscribe to the Equine Functional Posture podcast so you don't miss our weekly episodes, and you'll find the links to everything that we've discussed as well as our socials below, and information about the next Equine Functional Posture course.
See you in the next episode.
Bye.